Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Helen Gray and I'm the clerk for the Joint Committee. Thank you to all members and colleagues for your help in rearranging today's meeting from the July meeting. Unusually, I am opening the committee meeting because unfortunately Councillor Swift has given his apologies. So the first item of business today is to seek a nominee to act as chair for today's meeting. If members would like to give a nominee and a seconder, that would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I nominate Councillor James Lewis, please?
Thank you. Members happy to second that nomination?
Second that.
Thank you very much, everybody. So Councillor Lewis is nominated as chair for this meeting.
Thank you, Helen. I realised I was chairing, I'd have worn a tie today. Okay, so I'm going to move to the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is appeal against refusal of inspection of documents.
There's no appeals, Chair.
Great. Are there any late items, please?
No late items of business.
Okay. Are there any exempt items, please?
There's no exempt information in the agenda.
Okay. I will turn and look for apologies, please.
We have a number of apologies, Chair. Councillor Swift has submitted apologies and Councillor Scullion is here as substitute. Councillor Hinchliffe has sent apologies and Andrew Cross will be attending as substitute. Councillor Pandora sent apologies. Councillor Davies is here as substitute. And we have apologies from Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Morley is here as substitute. We also have apologies from Jackie Gedman and Ian Floyd, and from Kirsten England, Robin Tuddenham, Ben Still and Victoria Bradshaw.
Thank you. Item 5 is declarations of interest. So I'll look round the members here. If anybody has an interest to declare. No, there's not. So we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. If everybody who was present at that meeting is happy with those minutes, that's great. Thank you. I'll move then on to any item 7, any matters arising. Don't see any matters arising. So we'll move on to item 8, which is a business rates pool financial report. Naomi and Rob going to present, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Naomi Eastwood, and I'm here today in place of Victoria Bradshaw to go through the finance report with you. So this is the first report for this year's, the 2022-23 pool. It also provides us with an update on the financial position for last year's pool. As you all know, the 2022-23 pool was designated to start from the 1st of April 2022 under the 50% retention scheme. I think everyone here is familiar with the advantages of pooling and the financial benefits for the region, so I won't spend time going over that, but to acknowledge that the report is being written at a time, I think we've said here, heightened uncertainty with regards to business rates and the associated Section 31 grant income that comes to local authorities. We've got the continued impact of COVID on the region's business rates tax base, which remains unclear, impact on levels of reliefs, including empty rates relief. We've also got concerns about levels of collection of arrears from the previous years, and then going into the current year, what the impact of the cost of living crisis is going to be on business rates collection. So there are an awful lot of uncertainties that we need to keep taking into account, and I think those will be reflected as you see later reports in the year, and the monitoring figures are likely to change to reflect those uncertainties as we go through the year. So it's in this context that the tariff authorities are going to be forecasting the regional levy payments and the figures that are going to be reflected in the reports this year. So the structure of the Leeds City Region business rates pool this year, you'll all be familiar with. This year's pool consists of Bradford, Calderdale, Harrogate, who are sadly going to be leaving us at the end of this year, Kirklees, Leeds, Wakefield and York. 7 members. The pool's led by a joint committee, hence our meeting today. And one of the aims of this meeting is to approve the memorandum of understanding and the terms of reference for this pool in 2022-23. Those documents have been provided to you at Appendix B, and I'm not going to go through them in detail, but I will point out there are some differences to the documents for previous years. So the memorandum of understanding, the draft version that you've got with you this year, follows the model that was circulated by government prior to our application to pool in 2022-23, and it set out a different way of apportioning the funds generated by the pool across authorities. So that methodology for distribution gains that's reflected in this memorandum is proposing that 25% of those gains are distributed in proportion to population, 25% in proportion to growth above the baseline, 25% in proportion to levy payments, and then 25% to the 4 top-up authorities in proportion to the top-ups that they receive from government. That's a little bit more complex than it has been in previous years. We've simply gone for 50% in proportion to population, 50% in proportion to gains above the baseline. Authorities were aware of that proposal at the time when we submitted our full application to government, and were, as I understand it, generally supportive of that approach when that application was made. In addition, there are a couple of other changes. So changes to provide that the decision to admit new member authorities is taken away from the Joint Committee itself and requires unanimous agreement of all member authorities. I think this is to reflect that we have over the years moved between joint committees. So we had Leeds City Region joint committees, we had North and West Yorkshire joint committee, back to Leeds City Region joint committee, and we sometimes then have legacy issues that need picking up, including decisions about membership, and therefore the proposal is that the member authorities would make that decision rather than this joint committee, which may not be the appropriate joint committee at any point in time. There's also the addition of a provision to ensure that any share of the surplus can be paid to a successor authority of any member authority, and that reflects that we know that the reorganisation in North Yorkshire means that Harrogate will be leaving us at the end of this year. So it's to ensure that any decisions about the monies in this pool, we can still make those decisions and ensure that Harrogate receives their appropriate share of anything that's left in this pool. So we're requesting that you formally approve that memorandum of understanding and the terms of reference that are attached. In terms of updating the position on Leeds City Region pool income in 2021, we initially estimated 4.8 million of income to the region, the 21-22 pool. There have been a couple of iterations of that. The latest figures we've got, which include draft outturn NNDR 3s for 2 of the 3 tariff authorities, are indicating that that's reduced somewhat to 4.3 million. We have now actually received the figures from the final of those 3 authorities, and we'll work up those figures and we'll circulate them, so we should be all up to date with those figures and have a clear position on that, but it is a reduced expectation. For 2022-23, the original estimate was that the region would retain in the region of 5.1 million. We've now again reduced that expectation, reflecting each authority's NNDR 1 returns that went to government before the beginning of this year, and that reduced expectation is 4.1 million as set out in the table 2 in the report. Section 6 outlines the range of risks that are involved in business rates pooling, and members will be familiar with these, particularly the risk that should any authority fall into safety net, that the pool itself would need to provide the funding to support that authority, and that funding, additional funding, would come from government. However, we're not at the moment anticipating that any of the member authorities will fall into safety net. And table 3 indicates what reduction there would need to be in business rates income for each authority for that safety net threshold to be triggered. The lowest percentage there is with regards to Harrogate, and that just reflects the gearing effect and the fact that Harrogate are a high tariff authority. So we don't think there's any risk here with regards to the safety net. 7.3 is picking up the request for funding of £144,000 for Screen Yorkshire, which is the subject of a separate report to this meeting. And just then to point out that the figures later in the report reflect the assumption that that 144k will be approved. Obviously, if that's not the decision of this meeting, then we'd rework those figures to reflect that position. Right, so table 4 then shows the projected redistribution of the 21-22 pool surplus across each authority, and table 5 shows the forecast for the redistribution of the 2022-23 surplus across each of the member authorities. They're both subject to, obviously, 21-22 is subject to final NNDR3 figures being audited and submitted to government. I don't know the position for every authority. I know in Leeds, there are significant delays to the audit process for 2021-22. So we've not been able to finalise and submit our NNDR3 yet, and that may be the same for some of the other members. So that is holding up that final position. And then to the recommendations. So on the basis of this report, members are recommended to note the context and structure of the pool as described in paragraphs 1 and 2, to approve that memorandum of understanding in terms of reference as set out in paragraph 3 and the appendices, to note the projected pool income for 21-22 and 22-23, to note the risks to retained income and the breaching of safety net at paragraph 6, and to note the projected and forecast redistribution of pool income to member authorities as set out in paragraph 7. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Naomi. Are there any questions? Yes, please. Could people introduce themselves? I haven't got the names on the screen, so for the benefit of the webcast, could people introduce themselves, please?
Okay, I'll go green when it's on. So I thought I'd got it wrong. It's Paula Widdowson, Executive Member for Climate Change and Environment from York City Council, or City of York Council. I always get it the wrong way around. I've just got a couple of questions, and they are purely to do with the methodology. So I understand that the methodology is set up for this year, and York put in thick end of £2 million, £1.9 million, and we get £400,000 back. And next year we'll put in over £2 million probably, and we'll get £800,000 back. Can I ask when that methodology is being reviewed and how we influence it? Because it seems out of kilter that, given we've got 20% nearly of our population in the bottom 10% economically in the country, that we are not getting, well, we're getting less than half back, less than a quarter back of what we're putting in. So I'm just trying to understand the methodology.
Okay, so the methodology for 2022-23 is based on a model memorandum of understanding that the government provided to local authorities at the time that we were applying to set up our 2022-23 pool. We actually have had different methodologies in previous years, and we do agree between the members what the methodology should be each year when we apply to continue with our pool. I think what I will say is that obviously were we not pooling, we wouldn't be keeping any of those resources regionally.
And I fully understand that. But what I'm trying to understand is how we influence that methodology, because it's out of kilter for York. So this year, I fully understand that it's a done deal.
Yeah.
And the methodology is in there. But can I have an explanation or for the timing of when we can influence that? Because my understanding is, if, and this is from our financial ladies, if we actually took on the full model that came out from Westminster, we would be in a much better position in York than we currently are.
Rob, do you want to respond to that?
Absolutely. So the original model contains the final 2 strands of our formula, but it saw tariff authorities, who we also need in order to retain the levies in the region. Their distribution was much reduced. So there were obviously it was a matter of discussion between authorities. There will have to be a new pool set up for next year, because we are losing Harrogate, and therefore it will be a brand new pool, and that will be open for discussion again between.
So when do the discussions happen?
Usually in October.
Okay.
Usually in October.
Given we're in August and everybody's on holiday, that would then leave us September, October, which is about 6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah.
Can I have the structure and the understanding behind that, so that I can get the relevant people in our council lined up to understand what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what our position should or shouldn't be, and how we for want of a better word, phrase, play nicely.
Yes.
Yeah.
We will inform you as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any more questions, please? Great. Okay, I'm going to turn to the recommendations in section 8 of the paper, and I take it everybody is happy with those members here with votes. That's great. Shall we move on to item 9, please? And Belinda.
Thank you, Leader. I am Belinda Eldridge, so I am Head of Destination Marketing and International Relations here at Leeds City Council, and I'm standing in for Eve Roodhouse, who's our Chief Officer for Economy and Culture. So before you, there's obviously the report for grant funding for Screen Yorkshire for the coming year. I'll take the report as read, but I'll pick out some salient points that I think are really key. The business rates pool has obviously funded Screen Yorkshire for the last 3 years, and this funding in particular is for 1 additional year. The funding is matched by the British Film Institute as in line with previous years, and it does represent good value for money. The British Film Institute funding has been extended by 1 year due to COVID for 22-23, so this financial year, and the Business Rates Pool Committee is being asked to provide an additional year's funding in line with that and on the same basis. The report recommends providing Screen Yorkshire with 144,000 in funding to support funding of their Yorkshire Growth Plan, and particularly the costs associated with operating the Film Office. The Film Office forms part of Screen Yorkshire's growth plan, which is supported by the British Film Institute, and the key objectives are really to deliver a production service direct to industry to fuel regional sector growth in Yorkshire and Humber, working with production companies, key industry bodies, regional studios and private and public sector organisations. To note, the film and high-end TV production spend increased by 121% to 235 million in Yorkshire and Humber between 2017 and 2019. And the Film Office is a key enabler of film and TV production in the region. In 2021, it supported 259 productions with their production inquiries and ongoing film requirements. As production within Yorkshire continues to grow, the importance of the Film Office within this ecosystem remains, and the first 3 months of 2022 saw a 9% increase in production inquiries on the previous quarter. Demand for crew is high, and Screen Yorkshire's Film Office advertised 515 individual job roles, resulting in 4,844 days of work for regional freelancers in the 12 months from January to December 2021. The emphasis is most definitely on the fact that it's a regional film office, not just Leeds, and the request is to ask this committee to approve the additional year's funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. Are there any questions on the report, please? Yes, please.
It's obviously my first time, and I've obviously got too many questions, so apologies for this. It's great work that you're doing, and I love the statistics, and I love the fact that there's so much work going through the region and that the days are growing and all the rest of it. Why does this area, I don't know Leeds City Council, I know York City Council quite well. Why does the film studio, the area that that we're looking to invest in, require a £300,000 subsidy for this year if everything else is so successful? I'm just trying to understand the business model behind it.
Thank you. In answer to that, I suppose really the initial funding period was for 3 years, and with COVID having hit, it's sort of thrown everything out of kilter. Moving forward from this point, after this financial year, Screen Yorkshire is going to be looking to WICA for funding as opposed to this model. So I think really it's just an extension of the 3-year funding period that was originally agreed back in 2017.
Is there an expectation over time that that area will be self-funding and that it will sort itself out rather than keep having to take, you know, given the pressures that we all know are on everybody's fundings at the moment? Is there a business model that we can look at that shows that it is going to be a successful business in its own right?
I can't answer that fully. What I would say is that after this financial year, they really are looking to an alternative funding model from WICA as opposed to this.
This will sound stupid. I don't know what WICA is.
So WICA is the West Yorkshire Combined Authority for the whole of the Leeds City region. And so we will be helping Screen Yorkshire in evaluating their funding model going forward and helping them and assisting them with any funding and finding that funding.
Okay, so they're not looking to be a self-sustaining business. They're looking to get funding. Is that what I'm hearing?
I believe so, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Richard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Richard Cooper from Harrogate Borough Council. I think when we talk about the Leeds City Region business rates pool, we've not got to think of it purely in terms of what our individual authorities get back from what is based in our individual authority boundary. The purpose of the pool is to keep money that would have gone to government in this area to invest in projects that have a benefit across the Leeds City Region footprint. So I'm very supportive of this. Not because it's based in Leeds, because the staff will be here, and et cetera, and I'm in Harrogate. But because the money it will bring into the region and the economic impact it will have will be far in excess of the money that we're putting into it. Therefore, it is good for the whole economy of the Leeds City Region, not just for Leeds. And in terms of making the business wash its face, I've been a long time local government to know that most cultural activities never wash their face. So if you look at museums, even swimming pools, which aren't necessarily a cultural activity, something I'm a stranger to anyway, these very rarely make a profit. And I'm sure there'll be many fantastic, in fact, I go to York quite a lot, many fantastic cultural facilities in York that simply the council subsidises. There certainly are in Harrogate for the greater good of the amount of economic impact they have in terms of jobs, tourism, visitors, etc. So I'm very keen to support this. I think the statistics that you've given us are pretty amazing and show that the gearing for this for every pound we put in, what the region gets back out of it is very significant indeed. So as I leave the pool, it's been pointed out a few times. I know. And this may be the last time you hear from me. What I just appeal to all members is to never be too parochial with the business rates fund money. It's better in the region's pocket than in the government's pocket. And if things are being done that benefit the region as a whole, look not at where the headquarters are based or where the company's house have the company registered, but look at the whole region and the impact it can have on the economy of the whole region. And I'm quite sure that York, like Harrogate, will be a place where people want to film stuff because they're great, good-looking places to film. No disrespect to any colleagues from West Yorkshire. I'm from Huddersfield, I can say this. So we will have that benefit, even if we don't see the immediate benefit of having a headquarters and on-the-ground staff based in our individual authorities. So that's me.
Thank you, Richard. Of course, Last of the Summer Wine was famously filmed near Huddersfield for a very long time. Somewhere in Leeds stood in for the Soviet Union fairly recently as well, which I think might be more to do with the architecture than our politics here. Jane, please.
Thank you, Councillor Jane Scullion, Deputy Leader of Calderdale Council. I just want to speak up for Screen Yorkshire in terms of, I think this is actually, it's the beginning of a new phase in terms of film and TV, not just Channel 4 moving to Leeds, but all of the peripheral things that relate to it in terms of everything from catering to, you know, knocking up a sideboard that looks like something Georgian. We're just seeing a real burgeoning of film and TV happening in Calderdale. Gentleman Jack, for example, which has been an extraordinary international phenomenon. But also we're just about to see Gallows Pole starting on our televisions, and we think that's going to have the similar impact. And actually, it's Yorkshire. It really is Yorkshire. You know, in terms of Screen Yorkshire, I would echo what Councillor Cooper says. It's actually selling this region, and to a degree, people do need help in terms of matching, in terms of getting some of the infrastructure things. The aforesaid Georgian cupboards being knocked up in workshops here. I think there's a real pivotal moment. And this is a relatively small amount of money, which basically I think we could call it business support, actually. It's about developing business in the area. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. Are there any more questions or comments on this paper? So I don't see anybody, so I'm just going to turn to the recommendations on page 30 and see if everybody's happy with those. Great, thank you. And that ends the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming to Leeds. Hope you spent some money on your trip here. Take care and safe journey home.